Welcome to the Politics and Media programme. Conservative peer Baroness Vorsi has encouraged Muslims and other minorities to celebrate Christmas and join in with traditional British festivals. The message is pretty much in line with other politicians' emphasis on the need for minorities to more fully integrate with British society. But are the politicians themselves misreading at least one important element of British culture, the right to be different? Is there really any virtue in all of us doing the same thing at the same time in the same way? Here's a short report on the current state of the debate.
It's that time of year again. The lights are on, the trees are up, and Santa Claus is in town. For many in Britain, Christmas is more about family and fun than about religion, and many, maybe even most, who are celebrating this month are not practicing Christians. But does this mean that the UK's Muslim population should also be gathering around the Christmas tree? Government Minister Baroness Vorsi certainly thinks so. In an interview with the Mail on Sunday last month, the Minister for Faith and Communities said that all minorities should take part in traditional British festivals, including Christmas. There's no doubt some Muslims will be put out by the suggestion they should celebrate the birth of the man Christians see as the Son of God, a belief not held in Islam. But Vorsi, who's a practicing Muslim, criticised what she called political correctness for watering down Christmas traditions, such as replacing Merry Christmas on Christmas cards with the non-religious Season's Greetings. If English people were more confident about their culture, it would make it easier for immigrants to integrate, argued Vorsi, because there would be a clear English identity for them to adopt. She said,
"Being brought up before the politically correct brigade got going, on harvest festivals, maypoles, nativity plays, Christmas carols and the Lord's Prayer made me much more sure about my own identity."
Comparing England to Scotland, she added,
"The number of Asians who wear kilts at their wedding in Scotland is amazing. Because the Scottish identity is much more assertive than the weaker English identity, minority communities are more embracing of it."
But at a time when many Muslims feel under attack by sections of the media and society at large, some will accuse Baroness Vorsi of blaming Muslims for not integrating, rather than seeing integration as a two-way process between both minorities and mainstream society. And from a religious perspective, there's no doubt many will disagree with the idea that there's no contradiction between being a devout Muslim and celebrating what is, at least historically, a Christian festival. Emily Churchill, Islam Channel.
Well, with me in the studio to discuss the rights and wrongs of Christmas are Reverend Alan Green, the area Dean of Tower Hamlets and interfaith advisor to the Bishop of Stepney, Britain's first female Muslim peer, Baroness Udin, and Sheikh Ibrahim Mogra, Chair of Muslim Council of Britain's Interfaith Committee. Welcome to the programme, all of you. Alan, do you think this is, well, what we might call political incorrectness gone mad?
Yes, very much so. My overriding feeling is I'm just fed up with politicians telling faiths what to do. We've not only had this, we've also had the government, without consultation, telling the Church of England that it will be illegal for us to marry gay people in church. And whatever our views on those particular issues, I don't think that's of great importance. What is important is politicians meddling in this way, in a way that I think is not their business.
Baroness Udin, do you think this is right, that faith should be a matter, and indeed not just faith, but whether or not to have a particular celebration at a particular point of the year or not is down to individuals and really none of politicians' business?
Can I say, in the spirit of the good festive season, I agree entirely with Reverend Green and say that I think each of us in public life with public responsibility have to honour all the citizens, whoever they are. And I've been in public life for a very, very long time, and although indeed many of us do God, we venture extremely carefully to ensure that there is an element of respect for one another. And that means that to understand what's happening at a very, grassroots level. And we have to accept and understand that children, for instance, in schools, one of the reference that you made in your introduction, historically have celebrated and understood each other's festivals, each other's religion. And what is surely more important is not to have one sections of the community supersede another to assert their own identity so that it makes one group feel important. surely integration is about the fact that there should be some common understanding, but also to ensure that we respect one another's views and viewpoints. And that is one of the beauty of England, I think, that in UK more than anywhere else, we have developed some of that understanding. And I think that these kind of mishaps in between and some interferences by whatever the situation and circumstances are, purely irrelevant anyway, because people will go on having that experience and understanding of each other's culture and religion. And people like Reverend Green has done a lot of work, and as has Islam Channel, to promote understanding of other cultures and other faiths, as well as be assertive about your own, because that's what contributes to a greater development of and greater sense of community creation.
Ibrahim, do you think that this kind of narrative that Baroness Vorsey is engaged in is a kind of bottomless pit? I mean, one has perhaps a sensation that if people were to take it seriously, that if Muslims were to do it exactly as she demands, that then there would be some other hurdle beyond this that would be required to prove that people were genuinely part of Britain or something.
Yeah, so where do you draw the line would be the question. But I tend to disagree with Reverend Green with regards to politicians keeping their distance from religion. Clearly we have a separation of state and religion, but if you look at how we are set up here in the UK, when we make that claim, we do have a very significant involvement of faith in our politics. Her Majesty is not just the head of the Church of England, but she is also head of state. And from a Muslim perspective, I would say that within Islam, we do not compartmentalize different facets of our lives. Politics, economics, social life, worship is the whole package all in one. What I would have liked really is for politicians, when they wish to express their views on religious matters, to consult with religious leaders and people who have knowledge and expertise in their respective religions, so that any advice and recommendations they put forward are acceptable to those religious communities, and therefore will have a buy-in clearly to call on Muslims to celebrate in Christmas. And here I'm assuming, and I hope this is what Baroness Vorsey meant, that it is the religious aspect of Christmas. Then as a Muslim, I am not allowed to take part in the doctrinal and the other ritual aspects of any other religion. Much as I would celebrate the birth of Jesus, peace be on him, he is also very, very dear to us, but we would not be attending Mass and receive the Eucharist and all the other aspects which have a very significant Christian theological and ritual sacramental aspect to them. I have been, I like to think I've been at the forefront of defending the right of Christians to celebrate Christmas in its pure religious sense, and to win it back from the commercialization of Christmas as we see it nowadays. It is losing rapidly its spiritual value, and it's all about exchanging greetings and exchanging gifts and having parties. But there has to be a spiritual element to it. It's fine for us as a society as a whole to find a common festival where we can all celebrate, is something that I have nothing against. But for me, the main concern is, and I've been calling on many a Christian friend to please claim back Christmas from the commercial world and make it truly spiritual once again. And not only that, but I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about other religions and their attitudes towards Christmas, particularly of Muslims and of Islam. People assume that Muslims have a problem with Christmas. They have a problem with nativity plays and so on and so forth. We don't have a problem with that. We acknowledge and we have no issues with the fact that we are a predominantly Christian country. Even the recent census, despite the drops in numbers, we still are a significantly Christian populated country. And why should a majority faith community be denied of their religious practices? And I would take it a step further. It's not just about Christians being a majority in our country. We are a free, liberal, secular democracy where minorities have or should have equal rights to their religious practices. So even if Christians were a small minority, I would want them to be able to practice their festival in the spiritual way in which it should be celebrated. And I was once in Europe, in one of the countries, where after a meeting we were all taken, the delegation was taken to a meal. And we went through the city centre, and they had a proper life-size stable with hay and the sheep, and everything was laid out to show, according to Christian traditions, the birth of Jesus, peace be on him, that miraculous birth. And children were being brought there by their families to see all that. And I was thinking that why do we not see this in the UK, for example? Maybe I've not travelled wide enough in the UK, but it would be wonderful for me to be able to take my own children and show them that this is what Christians believe about the birth of Jesus, peace be on him, and the Virgin Mary, peace be on her. And then to be able to bring them home and hear how they feel about it, and then say to them, well, that is what Christians believe. Now this is what we as Muslims believe. And these are the two differences, and thereby enhance respect.
I mean, that picture of sort of interfaith tolerance, it's at some distance from what Baroness Vorsey seems to be saying there, because she seems to be saying that there's, you know, that there should be a pressure on you to do more than this, to step over a line here.
I think essentially she's confused faith with culture. They overlap immensely within our country and within the Christian tradition, but nevertheless they are distinct. I mean, I will have many more people coming to my church over the Christmas period than I have through most of the rest of the year. Easter is similar, but people who do not see themselves as deeply religious do still want to attend church at particular times of the year, and Christmas is one of those times. That is all part of a cultural understanding of the place of religion, and that it moves very gently into a very firm position of faith as well. But they are distinct, and we can't just confuse those two. We can't say to people of other faiths, you must take part in British life, you must support the English cricket team, and you must also support Christmas. I mean, I wouldn't ask people either to support the English cricket team if they don't want to, but it is a different question than asking people to support a religious activity and a religious belief.
I mean, you know, in response to what both of you have been saying, I was just thinking about two particular things. One is that a Christian friend of mine, she's an Asian woman, she's a Christian. She goes to a local church in Tower Hamlet, and apparently recently the Christian, the reverend, the pastor in the church was saying, there's too much attention on religion in his particular area. That's why people are not going to the churches in the numbers that they will go to the, masjid or in a mosque. And I mean, my response to that was, it has nothing to do with the fact the people who go to the masjids and the mosques are not the same people who go to the church. So one doesn't have anything to do with the other. And then surely the way that a church can be mixing with the community is that, like, I remember 25, 30 years ago, I used to have to take great numbers of children to the Christ Church playground. Mm-hmm. And because the Christ Church management at that time and the pastor there, he encouraged, people to move together, work together, have activities, particularly during the summer. So if the church does not have a relationship with the community simply because they're Muslims or they're going to elsewhere, I think the responsibility belongs to the church to ensure that there is an element of working together. That's a separate point. The second point I'd say is that I think the picture that Brother Ibrahim was depicting of, the depiction of Christ and, peace be upon him, his birth, it did exist. And certainly, I don't know, I don't have younger children in school at the moment, so I don't know whether it's relevant today, but certainly when I used to send my children to school, they used to be part of that whole process every Christmas. And I don't think genuinely parents who are Muslims or Hindus or other than Christians had any objections. So I do make great objection to the notion that there are people and their parents and in schools up and down the country who are Muslims or otherwise are actually objecting to that. There may be odd occasion when there are, some, sort of one person singularly standing up saying, well, I'm not going to introduce this in my school. That's different. That's an exception to the rule of what's going on up and down the country. And my final point would be to say is that the way that we can develop greater, building of bridges and understanding is to really take on board what Baroness Warsi had said before, is to challenge Islamophobia at the dinner table and elsewhere. Because I think to a certain extent that contradicts to what is being said about ensuring that we have to lend greater credibility or greater emphasis on making English people confident about their culture. Because if you ask any of the children in Tower Hamlet or Newham or Leicester or wherever, they are feeling very confident about being British. I think that the subject of feeling belonging and all that, the wordings have changed. So I think, we have to be more pragmatic about what we are saying about the practical nature of, festivals or whatever that we are wanting to celebrate or not wanting to celebrate. We do live in an individual society, and when we make very brushing, sweeping statements like that, we forget that.
And just to pursue one of the points that you were making earlier about the relationship between politics and the church, do you think it would be an advantage in this country if there weren't a state church? Ibrahim referred to the fact that there is, and politicians, when they're looking at other countries abroad, quite often invite us to condemn theocratic, as they call it, regimes. But this is a theocratic regime. The head of state is also the head of the church. Would it be better if there were disestablishment?
I used to think so. I was very much in favour of the church disestablishing. I have changed my mind on that, and I think that is because of the religious diversity that we see in this country. I think there is a real role, because of the history of the Church of England, because of its particular structure and its relationship with that history and with the state, for it to be part of the establishment. I think there is still too much privilege accorded to that establishment, but that we are connected in that way, I think is important. It's important for an understanding both of Christianity, but also for the place of all the faiths in this country. I think the Church of England does a great number of things very badly at present, but one of the things I think it still does well is represent faiths across the board within the public sphere. And we see that not only in politics, but also at every level. My local Church of England primary school has a very good number of Muslim families who send their children to it. And they know they can have confidence in the school that their children will not have Christianity rammed down their throat. They will not be in danger of being forced into conversion. That their faith, however, will be part of the curriculum and that it will be respected, and that they will, as part of that education, learn about what Christianity is within this country, but without that aggressive approach. And I think that is still a very important part of the makeup of our locality and of our culture.
Can I take the liberty of just making one point, which is that your point about the theocratic state? I don't think that this bears comparison to many of the theocratic states that you would refer to.
But my point is this, that really what politicians are doing when they're saying that is that what they say they don't like about Iran isn't really that Iran is a theocracy. What they don't like about it is that it's not a democracy, or not a full democracy, or that it has other aspects of the society. It would hardly be the case that it's a theocracy, since this country is as well.
Yes.
Well, I do think it is a very particular sort of theocracy, and therefore there has to be a real sensitivity to how we manage that place of faith within the public sphere. And I think where I disagree with you in where we began this discussion is that there is not that sensitivity being shown in the comments recently by the government, both on this and on those other issues.
Let me just
about
ask
gay marriage.
to elaborate on a point that he made earlier about the sort of spirituality of Christmas, and you were saying that you would encourage, your Christian friends to reclaim the kind of spirituality of it. But do you think that there is an element where it's a time of year which many people who perhaps have no faith at all try themselves to reclaim something of the idea of giving and of friendship and so forth, and to try and to reclaim a space beyond the commercialisation which should be encouraged, and which perhaps all religions and none could recognise as something inherently valuable about this time of year?
Sure, I think it's something that I alluded to earlier on, that we should have a common time in the year where, as a nation, we can all rejoice and share. But to do it at the expense of Christmas, which for Christians should be a very spiritual time, and certainly I would say for Muslims as well, we should be contemplating on the life of Jesus, peace be on him. In fact, my sermon on Friday is going to be about Jesus, peace be on him. And I make it a point every December that I deliver at least one Friday sermon on this subject. And our assembly at the madrasa with the children is always something about the life of Jesus, peace be on him. What I would like is really for the Christians to be able to have ownership of Christmas, to say this is a religious time for us, this is a very spiritual time for us. I know Easter and Lent are the more spiritual times, but Christmas is no less in comparison. And for people who are non-Christians, myself, secular people, atheists and all others who want to celebrate a festival, we should not do it at the expense of Christmas. Christmas sadly has become all about partying, extravagance and the like. I'm not sure how many of us really truly share with the needy at a time when we are merrymaking, because then it's all about us, it's not so much about the other. And it's during other times, during time of Lent, when you have to make sacrifices of the restriction in what you can eat and what you can't eat, during Ramadan when we do not eat and drink during the daylight. It is those times when we are really truly thinking of others who have less.
So I think in that sense what you're saying is that by Muslims and others celebrating Christmas isn't going to enhance, the opportunities for sort of decommercializing Christmas is not going to do anything. I was also going to say is that, the message... Okay, sorry?
You're going to have to hurry now because we're moving towards him.
The message is also very important for government ministers to bear in mind. It is still the Muslims who are getting the negative messages all the time, and I think that has to at some point come through, that it's also right for us to celebrate Eid, without, and we don't demand that others share, but we do make a lot of efforts to ensure that our neighbours understand when it's Eid, and that's really important.
Okay, well I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there because that's all we've got time for, but do join us for the second half of the programme when we're going to be discussing interfaith marriages.